Hello everybody, welcome to a KSP tutorial. Given the influx of new players into the community, I decided I wanted to make a video to answer some of the common questions and problems that new players will face in their journey. All the tips will be in chapters at the bottom for easy referral. There's a little over 10 tips in this video, and the very last one will take you from being a beginner to starting your journey as an advanced player. I'm going to start this off with a bonus tip on the game at the bottom here. They have the KSPedia, which is an extremely comprehensive guide on this game. There's a lot of information to be had here. You can learn about all the different stuff. You can learn about game mechanics. You can learn about orbital mechanics, definitions, things like that. I did create a video on this. You can find that on my channel here. The link will also be in the description below. But this kind of goes over all the different parts of the KSPedia, and I strongly recommend checking that out in the game or on my video. As a new player, it could be confusing to know which parts you should use for any given occasion, and so I strongly recommend paying attention to this window right here. By right-clicking on any of the parts, you can keep the window pinned in place and you get a little bit more information here. And as you scroll down the side, you can see all the different stats, the weight, what resources it comes with, and then some things here. As this one has a reaction wheel, that's important to know, as well as a crew report, some electric charge, and some monopropellants. It's got 3 different styles, so you have some information here when it comes to your capsules. If we take a look at this one to compare, one of the biggest differences here is that this one has a blader. It basically is its own heat shield, which could be very critical in an early game, so it's always interesting to, or it's always useful to know the interesting parts of the parts. So you can also look at your engines this way. This is a solid fuel engine. You have your thrust capabilities. You have your ISP, which is basically your efficiency. You can think of that. So that's where you can get a lot more information. There's not a lot to be looked at in the beginning, so once you have more parts, this will become much more useful, especially once you have multiple different types of engines and you're trying to compare which would be the best usage for any given case. So here's a plane cockpit, as we see, has a much more powerful reaction wheel. We also have a probe here, and so you can kind of look at this and see the specifics of the probe, the data transmitter. The antennas will matter here. It is a very fun game, but it's a very complicated game. Literal rocket science here. But moving on, we're looking at some fuel tanks. You can see how much fuel it can carry, the amount of oxidizer, different variations of it. You can look at the experiments. This is not a good example, but you can look at the experiments and see what kind of science it'll give you, whether it can be collectible, reran, reset. As we see here on the press barometer, collectible data and rerunnable and resettable, so we don't need a scientist for that. Just kind of looking at communications, all these different things are important. This is a direct antenna. There's a difference between direct and relays, so you'll learn that as you go along. And then just lastly, we're going to take a look at our engines. And as you see here, you once again get information about your thrust and your efficiency, your ISP, the different types of propellants it will need, and whether or not it has a gimbal. This Reliant engine doesn't have a gimbal, which means that it can't move itself, it can't swivel, and the swivel does. So it's important to know what parts do what and what are better for any given task, and I recommend checking out those windows. As you get playing, you're going to want to start packing on all the different pieces to the rocket, making it bigger and better, go faster, higher, stronger, all the different pieces, and you will eventually find yourself making something kind of like this. But if you were to try to launch it, it wouldn't let you, and that's because you have too many parts, your mass is too heavy, all that. You'd need to upgrade your buildings before you can do that if you're playing in career mode. So this engineer's report is the tip here. It's a good idea to keep in mind your limitations, and by having that up and open, you can keep an eye on your craft, especially in the beginning before you upgrade any of your buildings, because you're going to be stuck to this 30-part limit, this 18 tons, the height and whatnot. So you're going to really want to kind of min-max those pieces. As you see here, we're just slightly over our 18 tons. So we would need to start removing parts for that. Start wiggling stuff around and rearranging. I have this one listed as a bonus tip because this is a very common one, but as a new player, you are not going to inherently know it. But if we come down here to settings, we have a lot of different things that you can add on here and change. One of the things I really like to move around is my nav ball. I like to move it to the left, but you can move it to the right if you want. But I like to move it to the side to give myself a little more viewing area of our rocket. You can make the crew portrait smaller if it's in the way, or if you want to focus more on them, make it nice and large. But you can adjust all the UI elements through that setting right there. Another common tip, but also another very common problem, is when you get your rocket out on the launch pad, you get ready, you hit the space bar, and then everything happens all at once. And that is because everything is set to the same stage, so when you hit the engine, it also decoupled the pod and launched the parachute. And that is because the staging of each of the different actions were incorrect. So as you see here, you can adjust it mid-flight by grabbing and bringing it down. However, it won't persist, so if you revert the flight to the launch or back to the VAB, those changes won't be there, so you will have to, if you want that change to be permanent, you'll have to revert to the VAB and change it there. So as you can see here, everything's staged correctly, the craft separated, and the parachute deployed as expected. A concept that's going to be important to practice in this game is symmetry and balance. This is a ridiculous craft. You're probably not going to make something like this. I just wanted to give you a good visual representation of how an off-balance craft will perform, because it's the physics in this game are fairly realistic, and so the game is calculating the weight on all the different sides and will force the rocket to favor a side and then become uncontrollable. I make a mistake here. I should have just put these in line with the rest of the rocket instead of throwing them away. It would have been better to show you that that's how you would have attached those Science Juniors, not to the side like I had, but in line with the rest of the rocket. So apologies about that, but I definitely recommend trying that out. So why did it do that? Well, as we saw in the title, objects have mass. As we see here, the 2 hot thermometer has a mass of 0.005 tons. Same with the barometer. The Science Junior is 0.2, significantly larger. And then the mystery goo is also, this is 0.5, not the 0.5, so it is bigger than the thermometer, but not by much. And the game has this feature where if it's a 0.005, it doesn't calculate the mass. It doesn't calculate the weight to this. And so as you see here, I'm actually going against what I said as far as like you're going to want symmetry. Because you are going to want symmetry. You shouldn't build it like this. But I wanted to show you the concept of the objects not having the mass, the smaller pieces. When you certain pieces, not everything, but certain pieces will not affect the way that your craft goes. So as you see here, we launched straight up and we're holding fairly steady. You will see the prograde shift to the right, but that is only because of the rotation of the planet. So not only is this next one a hugely common problem, but this was actually the very first problem that I had. It forced me to go online and ask people what I had been doing wrong, and I had felt so silly, and I apologize. You may feel a little silly too. But as you see, we staged the rocket. Our staging is correct, but it is going nowhere. We heard the sound that the rocket is ignited, but there's no movement. We hit the spacebar again, but all it does is separate the craft, decouples the top, and stages the parachute. Obviously not what we wanted. And that is because we need to throttle up. So as we look at our nav ball and we press the Z key, we'll see the marker goes straight up to the top. The X key will bring it all the way back down to the bottom, so 100% and 0%. And then the Shift key will bring it up slightly, and then the Control key will bring it down slightly. So that is your throttle control. And yeah, if you make your rocket, you get your staging good, but it doesn't take off, you just gotta give it some thrust. So now you do have thrust and you have taken off from the launch pad, but it is a rodeo trying to control this thing. It is just flipping around left and right, and anytime you try to adjust the direction of it, you just end up overcompensating and flipping around wildly. And that is because the SAS is not on by default, and the SAS stands for the Stability Assistance System, I believe. But once we click that on, as you see here, the rocket is now much more stable. However, it is going in the wrong direction, so we are going to revert that flight back to the launch, because you're going to want to turn on your SAS before you launch. So we throttle up, SAS on, and then now when we lift off, we keep ourselves straight. We can even pitch over. You don't want to pitch over this early, but I just wanted to show you that we now do have the control of the rocket. We can just kind of gradually tilt ourselves. We also have the ability to kind of flip around and make quick maneuvers. As long as you have the swivel, you have that ability. But as you see here, it's much more calm, and it's much easier to get back into control. And another bonus tip for the Midway Point, here are some settings that are off by default, however I feel should be on by default, and is good to do in any game. So the two that we're going to turn on right now are Advanced Tweakables, which will give you more options to do in the VAB and Spaceplane Hangar, and we're going to turn on Extended Burn Indicator, which will be a little bit easier for you to do your maneuvers later when you do it. I also want to turn down the camera wobble. It can get a little sickening sometimes, so that's just that, but that is a matter of opinion. So this one will cover exactly how to do the science, but I'm also going to give you a tip on a few better ways to do it. So basically, you right-click on the experiment, and you get the option to run it, and then you can save the experiment, or you can transmit it. I don't want to go too much in depth into that. It's there's benefits and drawbacks to either, but anyways, so we got all of our experiments from the launch pad. Now we have taken off into the atmosphere, and we are doing more experiments as we fly along, and we have a third set of experiments to do once we reach the high altitude. So if you can spare the extra parts, I highly recommend grabbing an extra science experiment or two, so you can grab several biomes in the same launch. So now we are up in space, and we actually skipped the high altitude entirely. We're just going to do some space science here, and we right click on all the different windows, spin the camera around, and there we go. It was actually pretty easy to right click on everything because our craft wasn't flipping around or spinning, but you won't always be that lucky. So that last tip that I mentioned that will make you a much more advanced player will actually handle that concern, but we'll get there shortly. So sometimes you'll find that you launch your mission, you do great, you get your science, and then when it comes time to come home, you realize that the top of your craft is missing something, namely the parachute. This is a very unfortunate thing. Sometimes you can revert to launch or the VAB and fix it, but sometimes you've just been out there too long and you cannot. And given the fact that this capsule will be coming in way too hard, Jeb is not long for this world. We're going to watch as we come through the atmosphere. You will have some heating effects to deal with. We don't have a heat shield on here, so it is fairly dangerous. As you see here, little temperature gauges are coming up. I'm doing a little spin technique to hopefully dissipate some of the heat, but it doesn't work, and pieces start exploding off the craft. This was kind of expected. It will happen because of the fact that they are exposed to the heat on the way down. They will just explode almost every single time. If you want to keep them, you're going to need to put them inside of something like a service bay, but you have to unlock that a little bit later. But as we see here, we're going to have to say goodbye to Jeb and wish him well in the next life that he is. Or we'll just reload our quick save and we'll show you how you can handle this. Currently, we cannot EVA out of our craft in space or in the atmosphere. We can't do it anywhere except landed on Kerbal, and that is not going to work for us. So we're going to go back to the Space Center and upgrade our astronaut complex. As you see here, you can only disembark on Kerbal, but once we upgrade it, the Kerbals can perform EVAs anywhere, and that is going to be crucial. So now that we've upgraded it, we're going to go into the tracking station, go back to our craft. Thankfully, we have enough time to get back into control. And now we can successfully EVA, very first EVA of the series, or of the gameplay anyways. So now what we're going to want to do is take all the data, because all those science experiments got a lot of stuff and it's very important. So as we hang on to the side, we can kind of just like click on all the pieces, hit the collect data. As we see here, we get a warning from the mystery goose saying that once we remove the data, we can't actually run it again unless a scientist restores it. And poor old Jebediah is just a pilot, so that is why we have 4 mystery goose here. However, if you have access to EVA, you could send up a scientist here, only put one of those mystery goose on, and have the scientists reset the experiment. So you can save on parts and some money that way, and that will be good. So now that we have collected all of the science, we brought it into the capsule, so even if the equipment burns off the side, it won't matter because we still have all of that data. And it will burn off the side, I will tell you that. Just to expand on that spin technique that I mentioned, by doing this, you sometimes spread the heat out to different parts, and you can actually sometimes save those parts from exploding. However, in this particular situation, science experiments on the outside of a Mach 1 command capsule is almost always destined to explode. So now we have gotten through the heat of the atmosphere, and we need to now move quickly because we are coming down fast. So we're going to pin the Mach 1 command pod open so we can access it very quickly when we need to. We're going to click on the EVA button and then run here and hit take data. Yes, I know, we have to do it very fast. So we have grabbed all the data. You can see in the left that all the science is working, and we hit the P key, and that is parachute, and that will open that as long as you didn't take away the parachute in the VAB. Jebediah should be fine. He's got plenty of time to slow down, let his chute open, but as you see here, we are going 55 meters per second, so this is still a very dangerous speed. So now I'm feeling a little impatient. I kind of want to just get back down to the surface. So as you see here, I'm kind of doing this dive bomb technique. But every time I do, I pick up some tremendous amount of speed. So I'm going to need to bleed that off before I hit the ground. We are also physics warping 4 times, which is very dangerous. And when we do hit the ground, we're going 33.6 meters per second. And that is amplified by the fact that we have physics warp on there. So you don't want to have physics warp when you're coming down for a landing. So as a take 2, we're going to do this kind of back and forth to side, and then lifting up to kind of slow down our speed. And then once we get to a nice, calm, safe speed under 10 meters per second, we can land safely. And so that is how you can pull an emergency procedure when you're on a suborbital trajectory and you have no Jep, everyone's watching. Can you not? So now that you have the astronaut complex upgraded, you're going to want to do some more EVA walks more often because you can get a lot of science. As we see here, all of our experiments are set lower, which means that we can't actually access them from this ladder. We can't grab the data like we did before. Sometimes your experiments will have to be in a situation where you can't easily access it, and so you're going to need to RCS your way around, but it can be a little confusing. It's a little hard. ASWD keys, and then the left shift and the control. Sometimes the J, K, I, H, and N, and L key work, but currently I don't have them mapped. Typically that's more of a IVA setting, but that is a mod that we didn't include because I wanted to go stock for this tutorial. So my tip here is to set up some different key bindings. So as you go into the settings in the main menu, go to input, and then you come over here to Kerbals, and then down here at EVA Jetpack, you have all the controls. As you see here, we've got a secondary set where we can input. I like to use the number pad. If you have a number pad, this is very useful. The keys make sense. There's arrows on it. You can go forward, backwards, left, and right. And it's a little bit easier to access with your right hand. I like to have the vertical movement on these 2 side keys here because they're very easy to access. And that is it. That's all you need to do. Toggle the jetpack is R, and you should probably leave that because it's nice and easy. So now as we come back here, we bring him out on EVA once again. we can hit the spacebar to let him let go. We're going to hit the R key. Now we've got our jetpack. We still have the WASD keys, but now we can also use the number pad. And it's quite easy. We can choose which keys we want to use seamlessly. If we need to use our mouse in one hand, we can use the WASD, or if we have more convenience, we can do the other. Like I mentioned before, there is an IVA mod where you can do this EVA, the spacewalk in a first-person perspective, and in doing so, the WASD keys end up being your tilt and rotate, and that's why I typically like to have the number pad being our movements through the axes of space. So that way I will have two hands on the keyboard, but rather than in a typing position with my hands on the JKL, which is a little bit awkward for me to kind of visualize my way in space that way. So that's why I ended up changing over to the keypad, and the fact that having a little bit of extra distance between my hands just felt a little more natural for controlling. It is still a little bit difficult to focus your Kerbal's view, so you will have to make some fancy maneuvers. But you now have a better way of moving around using your RCS pack, and you could actually put those key bindings to whatever you want. I just recommend the number pad if you have it. So now it is time for the best tip out of the video for a new player, and this is the one that is going to start you on your journey towards being an advanced player. But it requires you to click on this option before you even start your new game. You can't change it after you've started a new game, and that is always allow action groups. You don't have to do this in every game, but I definitely recommend your first couple games putting this on. As you see here, action groups are typically given to you when you upgrade the VAB, but honestly, they are invaluable as a new player. So I remember how I said that flipping around, right-clicking everything can be a little bit tedious at times. So we want to do it where we can just kind of automatically run our experiments. Down here you have a little button where you can click on action sets, and that actually gives you 5 different sections where you can set up things. I put these names in, they don't come that way, but it just giving you some examples of how you can differentiate which sets go for what things. But in this early part of the game, you don't need sets. You're not going to have that many moving parts, so it's just easy to keep it on default. You press the 1 through 0 keys to access this, so that's why they're called custom 1. But as you see here, you left click on the item, you hit log temperature, and you set that up so when you hit the 1 key, it'll just do that automatically. But why stop there? Let's go ahead and put a mystery goo on, as well as a barometer. So now we have a singular set. One of each experiment will run when we hit the 1 key on the launch pad. So now we're going to put in that again, another set. These are different experiments for each of the different biomes. So that way when we hit each of the keys, it will just automatically grab. We don't have to worry about missing one. We don't have to worry about not being able to click on it in flight. I'm putting these ones on action group 4 in case I want to stage the chute and the decoupler at the same time, and that's when I noticed that it has this collect all. I didn't realize that the Mach 1 has the ability to collect all the science, so I added that on there. I wanted to test that out, but spoiler, it doesn't work, so you don't have to worry about that at all. You can change your action groups in flight here on the side. You can edit them and do it, but like the staging effects, this will not carry over back into the VAB or when you relaunch, so it's only for this flight. I am adding some things to the abort stage. That is your backspace key, and that is what you can hit when things start to go sideways. And so I put the decoupler, the parachute, and that collect all to test that out. So we're going to do a quick flight where it goes wrong and we need to suddenly and very efficiently separate our Kerbal, so that way Jebediah doesn't have anything bad happen to him. So we're going to tilt this way just to give ourselves a little bit of a change. We're going to do some science here, and then so we do have a bunch of science collected. We hit the backspace key, and the pod separates from the lower stage. It does take a second to actually get away from it, but it is safely coming back down to Kerbin. But as we see here, we don't actually have any science on board, and that's what I meant that I don't think it collected. Maybe I should have hit collect all first and then separated, but at least in this instance, it proved that it didn't work. However, if you try this for yourself and it is indeed you have to hit the collect all button first and then separate, let me know in the comments, because that would be pretty interesting to know. So as I kind of talked through it, we did the science for on the launch pad and low in space. We're still, or low in the atmosphere, excuse me. Now we are in high atmosphere. So as we check our crew report, we can see that we are indeed now in a new biome. I should have just kept that report. There's no need to recycle it. But we can do our last set of experiments here. Unfortunately, we only have 3, so we won't get any space science. You could add 2 more experiments, or you could just do another launch. So those are some solutions to some very common problems and questions that new players have. Several of those were problems that I faced when I first started playing. But beyond this tutorial, I strongly recommend joining the KSP community. It's a bunch of great people. We love helping each other out. We love seeing new players achieve their milestones. There's probably been thousands of posts that say my first Mun landing, and every single one of them makes us happy. And my final bit of advice for new players is go check out some more tutorials. You'll learn a lot. I have a few more tutorials linked in the playlist at the end, but honestly, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I highly recommend checking out these channels. Links will be in the description below. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KSP. If you did think about subscribing, drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.